Now, hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Chat South Africa with Pammy T. Now, today is a day that many of us have been waiting for. Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwane's budget speech. Now, we've all looked forward to this because in one way or another, it'll affect us as South Africans. But let's take a listen to what BOSA, Democratic Alliance, EFF, had to say.
What was the tone in the room, in the cabinet meeting?
I cannot talk about what's happened in the cabinet room. That is bound by cabinet confidentiality. So I cannot get any background on that. What I can however say is that the Democratic Alliance will not be supporting the budget in its current form, and therefore the budget being tabled today does not have a parliamentary majority. We obviously put on the table a number of our requirements to stimulate growth and jobs and to move beyond just tax and spend, and those have not been acceded to. We obviously remain open to further discussions before these budget instruments are voted on in Parliament in the coming months. But as the budget sits today, we are not able to support it in its current form.
But it will be tabled.
I've no doubt it will be tabled, but tabling a budget that doesn't have a majority, I don't know what the consequences of that are, but these are consequences that the Finance Minister and others will have to bear.
To pay for state capture. You are increasing the VAT. You are punishing people whose money was stolen, again, by saying you must increase their tax. That's what this is. It's not about saying you increase the VAT to fund the SRD. There are other ways to cut, as my colleagues have already spoken. I identified 60 billion rands in where the cuts are. It's about merging agencies. It's about ensuring that you halve the cabinet. It's about stopping some of the SOE bailouts. It's about ensuring that you build efficiency into your budget. And ultimately, no one has ever taxed themselves to prosperity. It's about funding for growth.
The proposed fiscal framework and revenue proposal, which is the budget speech being proposed by Enoch Godongwane today. Otherwise, I think the market uncertainty will be tragic, the rand will be affected massively, and it will show further deep divisions and incompetency by the government of national unity. So it has to be proposed today. There's no other option to do so because South Africa can't keep waiting. The presumption that the parties which form part of cabinet have to agree on the budget proposal in order for us as a nation to move forward is extremely misplaced. They are not the final arbiters of whether a budget gets passed or not. Parliament is. So whether they agree or not is neither here nor there and should never be the focal point of what needs to happen in South Africa. They must come out of that meeting with their agreements or disagreements. It's none of our concern. They must propose the budget to the Parliament of South Africa, which is constituted by elected people, and it is Parliament that must take a decision whether it accepts or rejects that budget. And one of the options available to us through the legislation of the Money Amendments Procedure and Related Matters Act, which was adopted in 2009, is that we can actually amend the proposed fiscal framework and revenue proposal. So it is a mere proposal, and the conception that what Treasury formulates and what is presented by what is essentially a bookkeeper and Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwane, is something that is set in stone, is completely and legislatively incorrect. They must propose the budget, we must go through it as parliamentarians and as political parties. If, for example, the DA is true to its word that it's rejecting an increase in VAT, must come to the table and sit with other opposition parties and draft necessary amendments, especially as it relates to taxation, to ensure that there's no increase that affects the poor negatively. Look, for us there has to be an emphasis on how there's going to be creation of jobs, and the proposed budget that was not ultimately delivered in Parliament a couple of weeks ago said nothing specific or concrete towards creation of jobs or towards a growth plan to grow our economy. The only thing this budget seems to do is re-emphasize the fact that we have $1 billion in debt service costs a day and projected 440 million annually from 2026 to 2027. Doesn't tell us how it's going to ensure that there's necessary allocations to improve healthcare and education in South Africa. So there must be an emphasis on how you're going to create jobs and an emphasis on how you're going to cap the decline of projected economic growth. I mean, now the projections have gone from 1.8% in projected increases of economic growth to 0.8, which is tragic and shows that there's no economic planning involved in the Office of the Minister of Finance or Treasury. They are focused on taxation, they are focused on emphasizing public-private partnerships as a mechanism to generate economic growth, and this is not proven to work in South Africa and has only resulted in the growth of the private sector. So we want a jobs and growth-orientated budget, and anything outside of that will represent a continued failure on Treasury's part. And as parliamentarians, it's time for us to take responsibility and not only reject but amend this budget, as is our legislative right to do so.